Welcome to another episode of the Pitcher Perfect podcast. I'm your host, Kat Osterman, here with my co-host, Holly Pierce, and we are coming at you today to talk about all things routines. As pitchers, routines are what keep our emotions, our mental state, even parts of our physical state consistent. And so we are going to go into routines today, and there are a number of them that all play a factor in our performance. The number one is obviously your pre-pitch routine, but Holly and I are also going to talk about your in-between innings routine. When you come off the field, you're in the dugout routine, and then even your warm-up routine. I was notorious. My warm-up was almost the exact same, probably for a solid 10, 15 years. Slight variations depending on what I needed to be ready for game day at the very end of my bullpen, but the first part of my bullpen was almost always the same. And so I think when you can create that consistency for yourself, it allows you then to be not just more consistent performance-wise, more confident, and as I said, in mental and emotional state, a lot more even keel and not riding the waves. So Holly, I'm going to throw it to you. Obviously you work in the range a lot with your pitchers. What are you guys talking about with routines?
Yeah, we talk a lot about, to start with pre-pitch and between pitch routines. That's a big one. Integrating a deep breath, I think. It sounds so repetitive, like you hear it all the time. You got to take a deep breath, but so many pitchers don't. I would say the majority of pitchers really don't. And so when you have that integrated into your routine, it just makes sure that it's something that you're consistently doing. I mean, not only does it calm us down, or when our bodies calm down, when we're able to really take deep breaths and take that time, it slows our mind down. And, fast minds typically don't make good decisions. And so having a routine that integrates elements that are essential really to slowing your mind down, that's a big thing. So we always start with talking about breathing. We put our pitchers in front of a mirror where they're working on their in-between pitch routines. Because I think a lot of pitchers, when you show them video of themselves, they're so focused more so on their mechanics, and they're not really watching what they're doing in between pitches, and especially right before pitches. And so we have them watch themselves in the mirror and see what it looks like and see what their tempo is. And I think that it's really important that when you're practicing your routine, that you slow it down almost extra, because the game's going to speed it up. So if you're practicing an even slower routine, when the game does speed it up, then it's usually a pretty good tempo. Obviously, we've got, pitch clocks and those kinds of things, so we have to keep that in mind. But as much time as you can take for yourself, especially to reset, so integrating a breath and really simplifying your mindset. So thinking like, what did this pitch just do? What am I going to do next? And we talked about last episode, visualizing. That's something we also talk about, is visualizing the next pitch and where it's going. Routines in general are going to be pretty personal because you want it to feel right for you. So I think as we get older, you're going to learn about yourself and learn what works good for you. But as long as it integrates certain elements like visualizing, breathing, focal points, that's something we can go into too, that I integrated that into my pitch routine. Is that something that you used, focal points?
Yeah, we can break down my entire routine, but ours was similar. Like when our coach tried to make us think about it, and you had to explain what your routine is, we had to have a breath in there, which I had already started to try to work on with the national team because I had joined so young that I just kind of go, right? And they worked on me breathing before I actually delivered my pitch. So a breath in there, as you said, a focal point, and also a release of some sort, whatever that is. And then obviously, as we mentioned, there's self-talk and visualization that can be parts of it. Yeah, we can just go into it. So if I've pitched, I'm at the front of the circle. I stay at the front of the circle and catch the ball for my catcher, and I walk the half circle back. So for me being left-handed, it's always towards the left side, and I walk that half circle back. And that half circle walk is my time to be hard on myself, be critical of the pitch if I need to. If I don't need to, then, I'm celebrating and let's get back. But when I get to the back of the circle, I stay facing center field. And there's usually a focal point in center field. A lot of times in college, it was my center fielder because she just was always there to just give a point and kind of, you got this. But that was my focal point and my release. So I took a deep breath there. And I did not turn around to approach the mound unless I was ready to pitch the next pitch. So if I was still reeling because I gave up a home run or a pitch wasn't working and it was like the 5th time I had failed to execute it, then I knew I needed to call time and have my catcher come out. So I didn't turn around and go to the mound if I wasn't clear-minded. When I was clear-minded, I turn around and I obviously get on the mound. Nowadays, obviously, you can take your sign off the mound, but got on the mound, catcher and I decided what pitch was going to be called. And that's where I just real quickly kind of visualized where I wanted to go. And then, took a deep breath and let her rip. So there were 2 deep breaths in mine. One was at the back of the circle, and then one was on the mound before I went to pitch. And it's get the sign and we go. So I think as pitchers, you have to make sure, and as you said, practice it to where it's slower than it really is, because you think it's slow, and then a game it's going to be, and you're not going to catch your breath. But I think a big piece of that is you have to as a pitcher, find where is the time that you can, as I said, be critical, where your self-talk, I don't want to say be negative, but where you can be truthful with yourself, and where's the time and what mechanism is it that now I'm over that and I'm moving on to the next pitch. Do you kick some dirt? Do you bend over and play with, pick up a dirt and put it down? Is it your rosin? What is it that allows you to now say, okay, I'm on my next pitch? Because I think that's a big point too, is a lot of pitchers don't have something that separates one pitch from the next. And for me, it was simply standing in the back of the circle. But if my back's to my catcher, I'm not ready to throw yet. When I turn around, my catcher knows, okay, now we can start trying to figure out what pitch we want to go with, and what you're feeling.
Yeah, you pretty much described exactly what my in-between pitch routine is. That was exactly what I would do as well. When we talk about focal points, basically for any of you out there that don't know what we're talking about, it's picking something out there, like Kat said, the center fielder. It could be a flagpole, a banner, or just something that you're gonna look at every single time that you get to the back of the mound. And for me, that focal point was what my reset and release was. So when I looked at it, that was me pushing the button that now I'm on to the next pitch. And another one sometimes I would use, like you mentioned, picking up dirt. So I pick up dirt, and then when I would drop it or toss it, it's I'm releasing whatever just happened in that previous pitch or previous at bat. But I think it's really important, so many people talk about the mental game, and very few really master it and execute it. And people talk about how the game is 90% mental or whatever people say, but what amount of time are you spending working on it, really? Because if you think that when the game gets big, and the thing is, your routine is gonna be the most vital and important in big pressure moments. And when the game does speed up, your ability to slow the game down and work at your tempo when things start to really speed up so that you can stop them from spiraling. And if you haven't practiced it in the easy moment, and you haven't practiced it in front of the mirror, you haven't practiced it in your bullpens, it's not going to feel natural. And one of the things that routines do for us is they create consistency in an otherwise very inconsistent game. Your routine is going to be your anchor. It's something that really centers you. And if it doesn't feel natural, it's something you do all the time, and now you're just pulling it out there because the game is starting to be big, and now all of a sudden you're starting to breathe or use focal points and try to reset when that's not something that's natural to you that you normally do, that's not going to give you that same feel of calm and consistency, because it's not what you do all the time. So it really has to be something that you're implementing no matter what the scenario or situation is, and something that you're practicing.
Well, I think you hit it on the head. You have to do that same routine in your bullpen, and not necessarily all the time. Don't get me wrong. There were times where we had a quick bullpen, so it was literally, pitch and let's get in and out because of time constraints or whatever. But if it's a bullpen with a very good chunk of intent, purposeful, trying to hit spots, do hitters, do sets, whatever you're trying to do, that in between needs to be as similar. Sometimes your bullpen's not as wide as the circle. So yes, my walk around wouldn't be the big semicircle. It might be back and it might be closer to the mound, but it's still the same type of routine. And
Right.
So I think that's big. One piece that, again, we always do this and we find topics that we can go on tangents about. But when you're talking about the mental game, and the piece that of the routine that I think is the most important is your self-talk. And your self-talk can be, as I mentioned, like if I gave up a home run or I didn't like how I executed a pitch, it can be, the best word I can find is critical. So it's okay that you told yourself, I didn't hit that spot, or I need to get that higher, or that needs to be tighter in. Occasionally, if you get frustrated with yourself, it is okay to be a little bit hard on yourself, as long as you have that release point to where when you turn around, for me, when I turn around, okay, you're good, next pitch, you're ready to go.
Right.
So you can be critical. You can also talk to yourself and be positive if that's what you need. I think as a pitcher, you have to learn too how you best operate within your own mind. Like there are some people like myself who I can be critical and keep pitching, and I can keep pitching fine. And it might be part of how I trained when I was young with my dad, because we were just very specific and very precise on what my pitches needed to look like and where they needed to be. And so that high standard is always carried with me. But some of them, if you just have to tell yourself you're the greatest thing, or that no one can hit you, or whatever the positive affirmations you have to tell yourself, that's fine too. But I think the biggest thing is making sure, and I've always heard this, is making sure you're talking to yourself and not listening to yourself. Because if you just start letting aimless thoughts go in and you're listening to them, that's when you spiral. So you have to be deliberate when you go on your walk to the back of the circle or whatever it is. You need to make sure you know what you're saying to yourself in game for that to get you in the mindset to go compete in the next pitch. I tell my kids all the time, we are playing a 7-inning game. Well, hour 40 sometimes, but whatever. We're playing however many pitches it takes. And so normally we're talking 50, 80, 90, 120 pitches, somewhere in there, right? That is 100, and let's say it's 7 innings, 120 battles that you are doing with hitters, that you're having to keep yourself in a mental state that you can just compete to the best of your ability. Mm-hmm. So why wouldn't you use your 20 seconds in between to put you in the best space here and here to be able to do that? And so that's where I think the deep breath helps calm this, and talking to yourself helps calm this. Because if you let this just spiral and you don't actually talk to yourself, then you're going to be reactionary instead of proactive. And that's where, give up a home run. Man, I can't believe you piped that pitch, or that pitch was piped, or even if they do a great piece of hitting on a great pitch, like maybe that could have been in a little bit more, but I thought it was good. Like, that's okay. Get to the back of the circle. All right, cool. She got a hit, not the next one. Turn around, let's go. But I think that's the biggest piece a lot of times that young pitchers struggle with, is figuring out what their self-talk needs to be. Because a lot of times when we talk about self-talk, and again, a whole nother topic, but we make it seem like it always has to be positive.
Right.
And like I said, you don't want it to be negative. You're not telling yourself you suck. You're not telling yourself you don't know how to pitch, those kind of things. But you can be honest with yourself. And I think that's the best way to figure out, where do you sit emotionally? Like, can you tell yourself like that pitch wasn't where it needed to be and still go to work on the next pitch? Or do you have to wait and reflect on that in between half innings? So that self-talk piece needs to be in the routine, and then you have to figure out what it is that you need to say to yourself. And that's coming from bullpens. I make a section of your bullpen where dad or pitching coach or whoever isn't correcting you on every pitch and telling you. If it's sets, you're throwing your sets. No one's telling you yay or nay. You're figuring it out, and in between pitches, you're going through your self-talk and your reflection before you get back on the mound to execute the next one.
I think that that's a really important piece. That's something that we do in the range where, when our pitchers are charting, especially, and when they're working their bullpens, we're checking in with them, but, it's a group session. So we're going from kid to kid, but allowing them time really to make their own adjustments to develop that productive self-talk. I think that that's a big piece. It's not about always being positive. You're not always just, trying to pump yourself up and being a cheerleader. Not that that isn't a good thing to be positive, but again, like, if you're going to make adjustments from pitch to pitch, you have to be realistic with yourself, and that self-talk needs to be productive. So if I missed a pitch, like, what's my adjustment? What do I need to do next? And when I say what's my adjustment, I'm not talking like mechanical adjustment, but like where do I need to put the ball? What am I trying to execute on this next pitch? And then putting yourself in the best headspace to do that. We talk also about, trained mindset versus emotional mindset. So our emotional mindset, is going to feel all of these feelings when things don't go right, if we give up a home run or we miss a pitch. But our training's going to tell us, the more productive things that are going to help us get through the moment. So I think that really connects back to what you said about talking to yourself versus listening to yourself. Because when we're just listening to ourselves, that's normally just our emotional side. We're listening to our emotions, and our emotions normally, they're there to protect us, but they're not very helpful in competition when we're getting down on ourselves. Our training and the way that we choose and learn to talk to ourselves in a productive way, that's what's going to get us through those moments. So that's really that differentiation between talking and listening, because again, if you listen to your feelings aren't always going to help you in those moments, because it doesn't feel good to give up home runs. It doesn't feel good to miss spots. It doesn't feel good to have a rough day or get squeezed by the umpire or yelled at by your coach. But our training tells us that I've got this. This is what just happened. This is what needs to happen next, and this is how I'm going to execute it. So, and that really does come from self-talk, and that's a choice. But it's got to be a choice to do it consistently so that it becomes what you fall back on. And like I said earlier, it really is going to be your anchor during those big moments.
I think that's, you hit it right on the money, and it's productive self-talk. I mean, like I said, critical but productive. You can be critical and productive. The one thing I think that you said that I really liked is when you were talking about the adjustments that need to be made and how you're talking to yourself through that. And it made me just think of like a long at bat, like someone's fouling a bunch of pitches off. So you're both in the at bat, right? You're not, as a pitcher, we are not by any means missing spots right now. Hitter's just fouling a lot of things off. And I think those are moments sometimes pitchers get frustrated because it's like, oh, they're fouling it off. But those were always, to me, it's like, okay, if I make this like tiny adjustment, I can get them to miss, or I can get them to get weak contact.
Yeah.
And so I think moments like that, when it gets hard and it gets tough and you start to get a little worn down because the at-bat's getting long or the inning's getting long, that's when you talk to yourself even more positive of not in the best, but like, I can do this. I can move that ball out an inch. I can let that ball drop just a little bit. Or maybe your changeup was like a little bit too fast. Oh, that wasn't even my best changeup. I can attack her again with that pitch. But I think it's those kind of thoughts that really help pitchers be able to be successful in those moments. And it comes because you're in your routine and you know what to say to yourself. But I was thinking, like you said that, and I was like, oh, I like 8-10 pitch at bats. And I used to kind of laugh to myself because I'm like, I'm going to get them eventually. That's just, that was my thought process every time. And so it was like, okay, where do I need to put this pitch? A little bit higher, a little more in? Are we going to take it down? Do we think she's going to swing if we short hop it? All those different thoughts. We've talked, obviously, the main routine, which is pre-pitch. You and I have talked about it a little bit in other episodes, but let's talk about my favorite, which is like our pre-inning, our 5 pitches that we get in between innings routine. I am a big, I don't want to say stickler because I don't force my kids on the Bombers not to do walkthroughs. If they really like to, I let it go. I don't make an adjustment unless we can't actually execute once the inning starts. Then I'm like, okay, we need to adjust the 5-pitch warm up. But I think your 5 pitches in between innings, and sometimes, internationally it goes 5 the first inning and then it's 3 after that. So you have to make an adjustment and have a different routine. But it needs to be, again, I say close to the same thing, that you like almost the same. I threw the same 5 pitches in the same order. I want to say 98% of the time. There was a couple times where if something wasn't working, then we would change a pitch in there somewhere and be like, okay, we're going to throw an extra drop instead of a rise, or, we're going to throw a slow curve, 2 slow curves instead of 2 drops or whatever. But we threw the same one every time. And it's funny because it actually goes kind of against what you do because, your 5th one, the catcher's always throwing down. So most people throw a rise ball because the catcher can get up and throw. Well, I was like opposite. I started with the rise, then we went curve, then we went drop, then we went drop on this side, and then I finished with a backdoor so that way my catcher could throw from the knees down because I didn't want to end on a pitch that I don't throw a lot.
Right.
But I did the same order all the time. And I think that piece mentally allowed me to kind of like a woosah moment. Like that's just you're a robot. Like you go in and you do your 5 pitches and you know you're ready and boom, let's get going. I see so many pitchers waste that 5 pitch time. And I'm not saying walkthroughs are a waste of time, but after you've gone 2 or 3 innings, you don't need to be walking through anymore. You should be throwing. I honestly think you should be throwing from the get-go. And so I think the big thing is, what are you doing during that time? When you go out, what's the conversation with you and your catcher? I usually wait for my catcher who's actually going to catch me, unless they were just the last hitter. And then I'll wait for the bullpen catcher, the backup, and high five, let's go. But normally there's a conversation about, who's coming up, what we want to do, if we want to alter those 5 pitches because something's not working. And then we go out, and it is straight focus game mode for me. That's a whole nother routine that allows me to put the blinders on and get into the zone, so to speak, kind of like Field of Dreams, Clear the Mechanism. Or not Field of Dreams, what's the other one that Kevin Costner's in?
Look for the Love of the Game?
Yes, that one. So it's like clear the mechanism, right? So that's my time to clear my mechanism and get focused in those 5 pitches. And I think there's just too many times that pitchers let those 5 pitches and let that time not get them ready. They just kind of go out there and throw.
I'm going to say also, when you said put the blinders on, I absolutely love that term. I think that it's just a universal thing that all athletes need to learn how to do. So many times, maybe I'm not describing all pitchers, but tell me if you agree that I think so many pitchers, when they do their walkthroughs or run-throughs or whatever they're doing, it really is to kind of put on a show, almost like, look how hard I can throw. That's what it feels like to me, that they're running through and they are trying to pop the glove, and it's like, who cares? Who cares? I mean, it's just put your blinders on and do what you need to do to be ready to pitch. You don't need to try and throw as hard as you can running through the mound for those 5 pitches because for what? It's you and the catcher. That's it. Just do what you need to do to get ready for the people that are coming up and for you to get back into a rhythm after being in the dugout. You got to kind of get back into your rhythm on the mound and start to get back in sync with your catcher. And I think that's, what are you doing for that relationship and that dynamic with your catcher when you're doing walkthroughs and running through the mound and the balls are going all over the place? You should be trying to reestablish that connection and that with your battery, with your catcher during those 5 pitches as well, that you're working with them. I like what you said about waiting for your catcher to come out if possible, because that's a time for you guys to get back in sync.
I think it's that, and let's remember, you're trying to make those 5 pitches make you look good if college coaches are around, right? Why don't you try to make your catcher look good too and throw something they can handle? Because it doesn't make either one of you look stellar if it's flying all over. And I think the other piece of that too is, what do you do once your team has 2 outs on offense to start getting yourself ready? Obviously when I was super young, I didn't think about that, but probably 16U on, we get 2 outs, my glove's right next to me. I'm not having to find it in order to get out, to go out to the mountain. My glove's next to me. If I hadn't had enough water, I'm getting water to make sure I'm hydrated. I'm starting to kind of seclude myself a little bit, not to the point I'm not paying attention and cheering and whatever, but I'm also starting to give myself space to where I can focus. Okay, we have 2, 3, and 4 come up. What have they done against me? If one of them's a big hitter, what was it? Was it a good pitch? Did I hang it? That kind of thing. But I started to give myself space with 2 outs. The older I got, the more you see in the dugout, I just generally gave myself more space. I wasn't in all the hoopla. I did it from afar, or I shouldn't say from afar, but from the end of the dugout. I just wasn't the person in the middle most of the time, unless it was a game I wasn't pitching. So I always kind of created a little space, and I think my teammates realized it was never a, hey, don't talk to Kat with 2 outs, but it was, you would notice I would start to go get ready and I would start to kind of zone in. So I think pitchers, there are routines that are small and very, very minute, as far as time goes. And it's, grab your gloves, sit next to your glove for a minute, think about who's coming up to bat. That can take 30 seconds.
Yeah.
If your team gets 2 outs but then hits, you have more time to think, or you have more time, you thought about it, you can go back and be with the team. Now it's in third out goes, you have 10 seconds to regroup real quick and go meet your catcher and go throw your 5 pitches. But I think that in between inning routine can actually start when you get 2 outs on offense to be able to start to really put yourself in a good mindset.
I 1000% relate to that. I think I learned that about myself when I was probably about 18. Because prior to that, I was always in the front of the dugout cheering. And I kind of realized that, I tended to really have to focus on getting my heart rate down when I was pitching. I learned how to do it, but I learned about myself that it was really hard transition from the dugout to the field. If I was all hopped up in the dugout and then now I got to go pitch and now I got to try and slow my heart rate and try and kind of center myself. So that's something that, you learn about yourself too, that I became, if I'm not pitching, I'm down there cheering with everybody, but if I'm in a game, I am creating that space and I'm down at the end of the dugout, usually for the whole inning, not talking to people like you said, but I grab my water and I zone out for a little bit and just kind of try to reset, and then with 2 outs I start to get back into, all right, what am I gonna do now when I get back out to the field. But I think that time's really important. I think that time's really important pre-game as well, to allow yourself time, if you know that about yourself, that you do need that space, to allow yourself time to, after your warm-ups, be able to have 5 to 10 minutes to go off on your own. I would start my warm-ups early, so I had 10 minutes to jog down the line, and then I would just kind of stretch down the line by myself, just because that was my quiet time that I could start to get in the right headspace. But always giving yourself time and space and not feeling guilty for it, because pitchers, we really have to carry a pretty heavy mental load, and it's important that we have those mental breaks and those times where we can kind of clear our mind and give ourselves, it's hard to focus for 7 innings, and we're really having to be in it every single pitch, almost more so than anybody else on the field. And that time in between innings is precious. Use it wisely. Don't feel rushed. Don't rush yourself. Don't rush yourself before the games. I think rushing ourselves is one of the hardest things that we put on ourselves, that we have control of, not knowing where your stuff is and then having to rush to find your glove and then get out to the field, or not starting your warm-ups in time before the game and then rushing. All of a sudden it's they do the coin flip and you're on defense, and now you're sprinting from the bullpen onto the field and you haven't had that time really for yourself. So those are all things within our control, and it's about learning about yourself if that's something you need to start implementing that, but learning about yourself and learning if that's what helps you what am I saying? If that's what helps you focus at your best,
Yeah, the pre-game routine is something I think as pitchers when we're young, you go whoever thought the smart idea is to go throw for a whole hour, I don't know. But I just remember at 12 and 14, it's hour before the game and pitchers are throwing. And I look back now, I'm why are we throwing a whole workout before a game? But obviously as I got older, that got shorter. And sometimes it was still long. I tell people all the time, I could do K-drill all day, every day, and just spin the ball and watch it spin and feel it off my fingers. It is that is my therapy time. So if I need to focus a little bit more, I will take an extra 5 minutes and just do K-drill. But I think you were talking about, for you, it's creating the space, your quiet space, your alone space, by stretching down the line a little bit by yourself. The thing I learned the older I got, and this was probably more into college/pro ball, probably more pro and international, just because there's days that I warm up. I always warm up with the team. It's just what we do, right? But then I think about it as a pitcher, does it really make sense that I do my dynamic warm up 2 hours before the game when I'm not going to throw until 30 minutes before the game? Mm-hmm. Okay. So what I started to do is I would warm up in my turfs. So I'd do the dynamic warm up with the team. If I'm pitching, I'm a little bit focused, but it's still 2 hours before, so I can still kind of be lackadaisical as far as mental state goes. I would shag BP, especially internationally, shag BP, because that's what our job is. Run the buckets, do all the things. My routine was the second I went to put my cleats on. The second the cleats went on, I am now in game mode and game mode only. So I'm not talking about where we're going to dinner later. I am not talking about, what I did that morning prior to us getting on the bus. I'm not talking about the coffee shop down the street. Once the cleats are on, it was almost not really an alter ego, but an alter ego mindset. Yeah. Okay, it's go time once the cleats are on. And so when I put my cleats on, then I did another for myself, another shorter warm up, did my bands, all the things I needed to do to get ready. But I think for me, there was a routine in the fact that turfs meant I could just kind of
Yeah,
not
that was
want
like
to
your
space out. But that was
button.
my fun time, right? And the second cleats go on, now our focus narrows. And so I think for young athletes, it's for you, and whether it's changing from turfs to cleats or tennis shoes to cleats, or if it's like, hey, the second I'm done, if you're a pitcher only, the second batting practice is done, okay, I'm going to go do bands. And the second I start doing bands, boom, I'm in game mode. And that's
Yeah.
it. I think that's where can you as a pitcher find the point that okay, game mode starts now. And it doesn't start when you throw your first pitch in the bullpen to warm up.
Mhm.
It needs to start before that. It needs to start while you're warming your body up, doing your bands. A lot of times I put my shoes on kind of slow and I untie them, retie them, make sure I double knot them. But that's for me because that's okay. Who are we playing today? What checking in on my body? What do I feel like? Where am I at mentally? Have they seen me before? This, that, the other, and you get yourself into that game mode, and then you can from there adjust with what you need to do physically. But I think too many too we kind of like we just treat pregame warm up like it's just a warm up. I'm gonna go throw 20 pitches.
Yeah.
It's like, go do all your spins on your drills, whatever drills you need to do. Throw. I used to always like to try to throw at least 3 good ones in a row of a pitch, or if at least 3 out of 5. And then from there, I would throw hitters, or if I needed to work on a certain pitch, I would mix like the opposite of that pitch, so my body was having to adjust.
Hmm.
But I would always, always, always end with hitters. Not my whole life, but like over half of it.
Yeah.
I like to do hitters because I feel like it starts to get me in the mindset of the first inning. A lot of times, and pitchers, this is a tip, if you struggle in the first inning, go throw 3 hitters in the bullpen before you go to the field. So like
Absolutely.
if you are, and a lot of my bomber pitchers will do that now. They'll warm up and they'll be like, hey coach, we're ready for hitters. And I'll stand in and pretend like I'm a hitter and call pitches and let them know what the counts are. We'll mix the way we normally would. And then there's other times where if it's the second game or third game of the day and they've already thrown that day, they're like, oh, I feel good. I don't need hitters. I'm in a good mental space. So be it. Just don't go walk the first hitter of the game. But I think if you put yourself in a competitive mindset by doing hitters or sets or something that is intentional, the last 10 to 15 pitches of your bullpen before a game, you're in a much better place. And I think that's too, it's like what routine gets you mentally ready to play, and that's what you need to build on. If it's hitters, it's hitters. If it's 3 in a row, it's 3 in a row. By the time I finished my last season of pro ball, my warm up was like 25 minutes long because I knew what I was going to do and how I was going to do it, and most days it didn't take me long to warm up each pitch.
Yeah.
And so I think, and that's the whole intent, is as you get older and more comfortable with pitching, your warm-up should be a little bit less. I don't ever think it should be really less than 20 minutes, but there's a few pitchers I know that are a little bit shorter than that. But you should be at least 20 minutes throwing and getting everything going. But we don't need to keep throwing for an hour and 45 minutes and 40 minutes if you're able to get this piece turned on right away.
Agreed. Yeah, I think that it's for pitchers that like to get go. Like for me, I would start warming up earlier, but it was only because I wanted that time after. You know what I mean? So it doesn't mean like, and this is the thing for the pitchers that do have really short warm ups. If you've got like a 15-minute warm up, don't time it so that you're warming up 15 minutes before start time. Like whatever it is, your warm up doesn't have to be long, but gauge it, like I said before, that even if it's only 15, 20 minutes ideally, but start it like a half an hour or so before the game starts so that you, like I said, have that time. But it's a time management, and really just taking ownership of your game is a big thing when it has to do with routines in general. Like whether, like we said, what you're doing in the dugout between innings, gauging your own time. And when you're on relief too, I think that's a big thing as well, is like whatever your routine is that you're going to need, expect that you're going to go into the game. Like, and you don't always have to be told. I think in travel ball, in pro and college, it's great because there's pitching coaches dedicated to you and managing the pitchers and making sure that people are ready that need to be ready. But in the travel travel ball sphere. I mean, luckily our teams that we work with, they've got us. They have people that do that, but not all teams do. And your coaches are managing a lot of different things. Maybe even if you're the starting pitcher, they don't tell you until 15 minutes before. And it's like, now you're feeling rushed. So if you think there's any remote possibility that you're A, going to start, or B, be on relief, like take the ownership and responsibility of your routine to get ready and make sure that you're allowing yourself time to do that on your own and not waiting to have to be told to go down and warm up, because that's tough. It's tough if you're waiting to be told, and now you know how games spiral like quickly, and you go down there and you can't find a catcher and you're throwing to an outfielder with a batting helmet on, and you've got 5 minutes, and then all of a sudden bases are loaded and they've already scored 2 runs, and it's like, oh my gosh, like I didn't get to get my routine in. So, taking ownership of your routine in every capacity, as well as the time management that you need to be able to implement your routine, I think is a really important thing, especially, as athletes get older and you get to know yourself better and what you need.
Yeah, well, and I think you hit it too, is like time your routine to where, like, I was one that I liked to pitch as close up to start time, but I wasn't rushed. It was just, I want to finish my bullpen, and unless we're visitors, I'm going straight out to the mound. I don't want to go into the dugout where people might be dilly-dallying or goofing off or whatever their fun-loving thing is to get ready. Like, I don't want to enter that space because it's just not me. Like, I need to stay in a good, serious mindset. So I will stay in the bullpen. And if we have time, I'll take a break, go grab some water, go grab a drink, whatever, and then come back to the bullpen and throw a little bit more if I need to. So I think know yourself too, because I think there are athletes who think, oh, that's fun, they're playing hacky sack, I'll go do that. But is that the best for you to be at your best? And I'm not saying it can't be. Like, some people can.
Everyone's different.
Everyone is different. But I think that's the big piece, is you making sure you know what you need and time it correctly. You can always throw a little bit more or take a break in the middle and come back if you start too far out in advance and you're going fast. So I think that's a thought process too. But I think the biggest thing is know yourself and what you need. And the last routine I'm going to say, and the older I got, the more it was more important, is whatever warms you up. Dynamic warm up, a band routine, a med ball routine, static stretching, if you use weighted balls, whatever it is, you need to be doing that every time you warm up.
Yeah.
I'm not saying if you play back-to-back games, obviously we're not doing bands before back-to-back games, but when you go for that initial warm up, do what you need to do in order to get ready physically, because I have a pitcher. This is where this comes from. I have a pitcher. She's gone to a new pitching coach a little bit, which is great. It's helped us. But the new pitching coach gave her a drill to do that helps her with her posture in pitching. And so she was struggling when we were in Colorado, and I ironically was on the phone with her. I didn't call the pitching coach on purpose to talk to her about this individual. And she said, hey, just ask her, is it timing or posture? And if she says it's posture, tell her to put the drill in her warm-up. And it got me thinking, if you have a drill that puts you in good posture, why would you just not do it every day? Why would it just not be part of your warm-up after you know it puts you in a good place? And so we had that conversation. She said, yeah, after you told me about it today, I started thinking I should probably just do that every time I warm up to pitch. And I was like, sounds like a good idea if we want to be in good posture. Why wouldn't we just add that in? So if you have things that make your body feel good, for me, there was a lot of stretching the older I got after surgeries and whatnot. I was very particular with stretching, and a lot of times I had to have an athletic trainer help me, but I made sure they knew how I got stretched for it to be the most beneficial for me. And so I think you guys as pitchers start to understand what your body needs. Sometimes I needed to run to the fence and back too before I went out. If we were visitors, I needed to take a run to the fence and back before we went out to the mound in order to get my legs firing again after my bullpen. So Just know what you guys need, and I think keep it consistent. The more consistent you can be, you're going to be confident in yourself. You're going to be confident in your preparation. And more important than anything is your preparation will lead to how confident you start a game off. We control, I say 3 things, but there's a couple others that fall in there, but attitude, effort, and preparation. And preparation is 100% something you can own at all times, because nobody else gets you ready to pitch except for you.
That was a mic drop moment, I think. I don't know how I can follow that one, but that was perfectly said. Yeah, you hit the nail on the head with that. The only thing I'll reiterate, I guess, is just how routines really are your anchor. Make them personal, personalize them, like you said, make them consistent, and all in all, like do them with a purpose. Like, and that really ties back into personalizing your routine, is that everything is done with a purpose, and whether that's a mental piece or a physical piece, but make sure you've got some reasoning behind it. You're not just, the thing that about this sport is so many people just do things because it's what everybody else does. And they don't question things. Like, question, is this right for me? Does this make sense? Like, does this make sense? I know it was kind of a joke when we hung out in Colorado about how our team doesn't hit wiffle balls before games. But, Scott made a joke about that with Tony. But like for us, it's what works for us. It's what Tony questioned, like, everybody hits wiffles. Why do they hit wiffles? Does it make sense for us? For us, we just don't integrate it, and because that's what makes sense. But my point being is, that may not be for everybody, but question things and tailor it to you and what works for you. Don't be afraid to be unconventional, and don't be afraid to speak up and say, this is what I need to be ready, or what I don't need, whatever helps you be ready. But it's all about anchoring yourself and putting yourself in the best physical and mental place to be able to deliver on every pitch for 21 outs.
Yep. It just reminds me, you say that, is, when I was younger, I did throw a lot before a game. And there were times that we played obviously 3, 4, 5 games in a day, and my catchers didn't want to be back an hour before the game. It was that's fine. So I would start with my dad, but I wanted to throw, and I needed to throw because I hadn't thrown yet that day, or I had thrown at 8 in the morning and now it's 4. And so I started with my dad, and then they came in towards the end when we started mixing. It's but that's what worked for me, and we found a way to integrate both of it to where someone didn't have to be squatting for an hour when they didn't need to because they were going to catch in a game again. So like you said, make it your own. I would question things for sure, but as you go and do things and you learn new things, you see people, and I don't say, like you said, not everything is for everyone, but if you see someone doing a stretch or a band routine, ask why.
Yeah. If
it's a new band exercise, ask why. And if it's something that you're like, oh, well, maybe that part of my body, maybe that'll work. I had trainers, all sorts of trainers that showed me different arm care, different things, and there were some exercises that I learned in college. I was like, this has to go with me, because as much as everyone else is like, well, you can do it this way. I'm like, no, I do it this way because I know I feel it. My body gets triggered to turn on the way I need it to. So just be confident. But I think the biggest piece, like you said, is just own it. Make it yours. It doesn't have to be like anybody else's. It makes sense for you. Yeah, preparation's key. Preparation's going to lead you to be most confident once you take the circle. So. Yep. Buy into your routines, practice them, allow them to be in your bullpens as much as possible. Allow yourself to understand what your routine is, so if there's a breakdown of it or it starts to speed up, you can kind of catch the feel of that. So be conscious of what you're doing and why you're doing it. But I think that's all I got. So unless you got anything else, you can take us home.
I think that's all. You already mic dropped that moment, and then I continued on after. But good stuff. This is, again, it's everybody talks about how breathing and routines and the mental game is so important, but how many people are doing it and practicing it? So I think that is the biggest takeaway, is do it. Don't just talk about it, be about it. These things work. You're hearing from one of the best pitchers to ever pitch in the game about her routine. So try it out and see if it works for you. But thank you for joining us. This is episode 11 of the Pitcher Perfect podcast. I can't believe we're this far. We will be back with you guys next week. Subscribe, follow, comment, all the things on YouTube and Spotify and on Instagram. And we will catch you guys later.